My name is Caroline Gonze. I am a chief at interim at UNFPA in Ethiopia. Today I'd like to share a few reflections concerning the lesson you had this week on women's meaningful participation and representation as part of the Gender and Mining Governance MOOC. On slide number 2, you will see an x-axis and a y-axis and a Venn diagram. The Venn diagram that talks about access, participation, and inclusion. And you can see we have issue of practical needs of women and their strategic interest. In terms of participation, meaningful participation of women, for example, if we look at local government level, if we look at local committee levels, some of the key issues we would want to think about would be women's representation in these planning committees. Are women equally represented in the planning committees? Do they meaningfully participate? And how is meaningful participation influenced? By ensuring that women have access to participate, meaning what time are these committees being held? Are they being held during the time when women have other responsibilities in the house or in the marketplace? Are they being held in a language the women understand, particularly when you're looking at intersectionality of rural women? Are they being held in a format that is convenient for the women in terms of cultural awareness? Is a woman able to speak in front of a man? Are we able to have local government bylaws that ensure that when a man speaks, a woman speaks, and bylaws that actually govern the time when these meetings can be held so that women are able to attend the meeting while also balancing their other chores in the house? So that is what we're talking about, participation, the practical needs right now. What do the women need to participate right now? The timing of the meetings. In terms of strategic interests, how are the bylaws being constructed to ensure that in the midterm and long term, women are able to equally participate and meaningfully benefit from some of these committees and planning meetings that are being held within resource extractive projects, particularly in a rural setting? Now, in slide number 3, we are looking at issues of policy coherence. And here we are looking at issues of gender responsive policies. We know these days that the extractive sector is not as enclave as it was before because of all the forward, backward, and lateral linkages we have these days. So the issue is, are there contradictory policies that take away from women's meaningful participation in the sector? For instance, we have the regional integration right now in Africa, where we're talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement that will come into play from 1st January 2021. Now, when this comes into play, there will be massive infrastructure overlay, construction of roads, construction of bridges, construction of railways to ensure the regional integration and that the value chains really are regional before even they go global. So, in this case, are there policies that really put out affirmative action for women in the sector? Is there a 30% procurement policy that ensures that materials, development minerals materials for construction of roads, for construction of bridges actually come from women in the sector? So these are some of the kind of policy coherence issues we are looking at. In terms of family law and SME law in some countries, there's a lot of contradiction where we have the SME law encouraging women to take part in the sector, to open bank accounts, but a family law that actually stipulates that a woman cannot open a bank account or cannot sign a contract without the patronage of a husband or a male family figure. So here we are seeing two policies that actually have a differential impact on women in the sector that contradict each other. So one of the key issues we need to look at is issue of policy coherence in all the sectors related to the extractive sectors to ensure that none of the policies contradict the other to actually take away from women in the sector. Now, below that slide, at the bottom of that slide, you will see an illustration where we have formalization support, capacity development support, and business acceleration support. This is a continuum to show the place of women. Where are women in this value chain, even as we do a structured business acceleration program for women to meaningfully participate in the sector. Now, in slide number 4, you will have a big illustration on the structured business acceleration project. And you can see that we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And I'd like to put it out there right from the get-go that these are not individual siloed pillars, because you can have stage 1 business acceleration being informed by stage 3, likewise stage 2 informing stage 1. So all this is in a continuum, so to speak. As we look at stage 1 of the business acceleration program, a key part of stage 1 is formalization, because we know many of the governments will not provide requisite support for people operating outside of the formal system. And we know in the mining sector, particularly artisanal and small-scale mining sector, a lot of the women actually are in the informal part of the economy. And so how do we formalize? Even as we create the associations, are women represented as part of the associations? Are women position holders in the associations? In the governance structure in the constitution, are women centered in these associations? If not, is there a women's wing of the association that caters to the differential needs of the women? So these are some of the key issues we need to look at in terms of the associations as we formalize, to ensure that formalization of the associations do not take away from women's meaningful participation. Now, in terms of stage 2, in terms of stage 2 capacity development, we are looking at issues of ensuring that women have access to capacity development opportunities, particularly as we look at the rural women, the women with minimal education. How are they accessing the capacity development initiatives? Do they have to go to short-term classes? Do they have time? Are these classes being held when women are otherwise occupied with reproductive and productive chores in the house and in the marketplace? How is the information passed on to these women? Is there information asymmetry? Do they get the same information as the men? Are they able to get this information from mobile phones? Do women even have access to mobile phones? So these are some of the key issues that policy would need to look at to ensure that really women are reached and have access and equal opportunities to participate in capacity building initiatives. When we look at the other end of the spectrum, where we are looking at business acceleration, business development, here we are looking at issues of support with compliance. Are we looking at when you're looking at environmental and social safeguard compliance? When you're looking at women, are there grievance handling mechanisms in place? Are these mechanisms accessible to the women in the sector? Are women able to report? Is the composition of this grievance handling committee equal, where we have equal number of men and women? How are women able to report the cases? What kind of deliberations influence the handling of these grievances? So all those are key gender analysis issues that need to be looked at when you're looking at issues like grievance handling mechanisms that ensure that women really are at the center of these committees. Another key issue we would need to look at is ensuring that we have gender responsive due diligence mechanisms, due diligence value chains, to ensure that all along the value chain, every action or inaction has a differential impact on women. So how do we identify, how do we address, how do we mitigate, how do we ensure that this does not have an adverse effect on the women? Another key issue to look at as we're looking at safeguards is the issue of gender-related human rights abuses. How are they identified? How are they assessed? How do you mitigate them? How are they addressed? How are women centered within the mitigation and addressing of these gender-related human rights abuses. So those are some of the key issues that need to be front and center as we look at the policy angle to ensure women's equal participation. Another key issue as we wind up would be the issue of ensuring, as we look at transformation looking at licensing structures, registration. Do women have the same access to licenses for mining concessions as men? Do they have the same information concerning availability of these concessions as men? How are we able to work around that? In terms of land use planning, is there interaction between the resource sector and the infrastructure sector to ensure that if a road is being placed in this area, how will it impact on women? If a health center is being built in this area, how will it impact on the women and the mining communities? So as we look at all these are some of the key issues we need to look at to address as we go forward in terms of the policy angle to look at. In terms of transformation and business acceleration, do women have access to markets and market information? Do they have access to financing? Do they have access to de-risking mechanisms to ensure that they are actually prioritized when issues of finance come up? So these are some of the many key issues to be looked at, even as we look at women's meaningful participation and representation in resource extractive projects. Thank you very much.